Hi, it's Jackie here from the LGFA, and it's been a while, but we're back on a call today with three very special guests. I'm going to introduce them to you now. Top left-hand side of my screen, as I look, is Sean Costello from the Dominican College Griffith Avenue in Dublin. And Sean was our school coach of the year earlier on this year, honoured for his exploits last year, if that makes sense. For our National Volunteer of the Year Awards. Sean, great to have you on. We're also joined by Fiona Crotty-Laffan, Ballymacarbery and Waterford ladies football legend. And that is the right word to use in this instance. And we also have another legend, William Harmon, who is the LGFA Head of Coach Development. So folks, you're very welcome along. William, I'm going to let you tee everything up here. But today we're going to be talking about, from a coaching perspective, ensuring a player-centered approach. William, the floor is yours.
Yeah, really looking forward to this one, Jackie, and delighted to be joined by Sean and Fiona today. So, yes, so we're looking at the player-centered approach from a coaching perspective, and this is one of two shows, Jackie, in that our next show will be looking from a player's perspective, or a former player's perspective, or a current player's perspective. So, looking forward to that over the coming weeks as well. But today, yeah, we're going to talk all things coaching around how can we ensure we have a real positive coaching environment where the player is the center of the focus. So, yeah, so really looking forward to listening to Sean and Fiona and their experiences, and what in creating that positive environment.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with Sean, because Sean obviously is you're a teacher, Sean, in Dominican College, and your work with ladies footballers in the school hasn't gone unnoticed. Let's put it that way. So, how did this interest in coaching develop for you, Sean?
It's always been something that as you come towards the end of your own playing career, you don't want to leave the game, but you're saying, oh no, I'm not really at the races for to be on the pitch. So it's always been an interest. And then I've always found there's nothing more rewarding than seeing someone that has put limitations on themselves and they overcome them. That there's this moment where almost like a light bulb moment, and they get this feeling that there's more to me than this, like I can have these traits or attributes to my character. I find from a school teacher perspective that oftentimes we can be defined by a result, and we can say it could be a maths test or it could be an English essay that's gone wrong for you, and saying they might leave with the feeling I'm no good. And sports provides that outlet to where you can say there's more to me than that. You could be the smallest player on the pitch, but you're the hardest tackler. You could be, if you show, and I find with the school, I'm coaching the Whitehall senior ladies, but I find with the school, because you have a petri dish of different clubs, you really need to buy into the identity, because you're competing with, unfortunately, clubs that might say, look, it's only a school match. You can give it a miss. My match is more important, and you want to try show them that, look, there's more today in be school life than just the classroom. There's more learning. Can we see the pitch as a learning environment? And you notice it then after matches. It could be when the hard matches, and they come back with the spring in the step, and there's the camaraderie, and there's they come back and they're telling you about the games they had the weekend and so on, and it builds that rapport, and it really is, I find, a true investment in young people.
Ah, that's brilliant. Will, you're nodding there, and so are you, Fiona. I mean, you talk about a player-centered, keeping the player at the center of everything. I mean, Sean has just nailed it there, to pass it, what it means to players to be involved in sport and ladies football there, Will.
Yeah, 100%. And it goes down to even individual development as well of a person. It's sometimes we think of as a player, but actually we need to, I suppose, view players as people. And we're developing people, aren't we, really? And I suppose the broader benefits to sport as well that brings to an individual development of a person. And I suppose that holistic approach really into Jackie, that we're developing people, not just players. So I think that's a very interesting point made by Sean.
Fiona, a lot of things I'm sure Sean said there resonating with you also.
Absolutely. I mean, look, as you said, some people in school, when they get out on the playing pitch and they can find themselves, and they can maybe, gain that little bit of respect that they may have not got in a classroom environment, particularly even sometimes if a child is struggling in a classroom environment, they get out onto that pitch and they can really show people what they're made of and stuff. And it's, it's important. It's about building confidence, as William said there. It's about the person first and then the player. You know, so if you're coaching the person first, what you want to put their voices and their needs first and foremost and at the center of the whole coaching process. And what you're doing there then is, I suppose, you're developing them physically, mentally, emotionally, you know, building resilience, their confidence as well, you know, building their confidence as well, like, you know, and that's huge. And it really is about the person first and then the player.
Yeah, it's a lovely message. And Sean, have you found that, for example, there might be a student who's struggling academically, but is really good from a sporting sense, but the fact then that they're gaining more confidence on the field of play, that they actually start to improve in the classroom also?
Yeah, absolutely. My own subject would be English, so we can actually exploit the sports narrative a bit more, because when we're writing a personal essay, you can say, look, let's base it on your championship experience, let's base it on your failure, or just even that. We had some lovely essays there recently about just the transitions off we go through from the underage Bua Nua to failure to captain and the minors, and then the sort of fear of stepping into the adult world of football, that I finally found my sense of place, but knowing I'm capable of it because I've overcome these barriers before. I just think when you have it, particularly, and I'd be guilty of myself, after every match that we play with the school, I'd write an exaggerated article for them, and I'd ensure that everyone gets named and everyone gets mentioned. And you do see this confidence for it, and like you might be saying, there was 82,000 people at the game, and it was more pristine than Croke Park, and really you're playing in a county council pitch, that there's no one giving you hands with nets or flags, and you're hoping it's half lines for it, that the ball goes over the hedge and it's not returning, but you're trying to make this nostalgic memory a core memory for them. And I find then you see when they're looking at it, they do pretend to be embarrassed by it, but every morning after a match, there's 15 of them waiting at the wall to see the article go up and see where is my name. And then there is, by and large, that transition. It does come to the classroom then, where I didn't think I could win, but I did it there. So I'm coming into the maths test, or I'm coming into the English test with the same belief. For I've faced these challenges head on before. I'm just having the inspiration in different contexts or different environments.
That's brilliant, Fiona. That brings a lot of memories back for me, you know, checking the name, albeit under 12, under 14 back in the day, checking the name in the paper. It's just, it's lovely. And where was your field of dreams, Fiona, before you reached the pinnacle of Croke Park and other venues like that?
Well, sure, look, it all started down in Ballymacarbery, and I mean, what a start to ladies football I got there, you know. And I suppose I was lucky in a sense that I came into a setup that, you know, my sister was there involved for years, and Michael and Bridget McGrath and all them, and like, you know, they struggled for years, like, and they had a lot of losses before they became successful. So and I think sometimes people forget that, you know, of all the hard work and the slogging that they had to do. I was lucky in a sense to come on at a time when they were becoming successful, and they were successful. So you know, I had a great start, and I suppose for a long time I didn't know what it was like to lose, and you know, sometimes I kind of wonder, I look back on that and go, you know, what way did that build me as a person, like, you know? And I suppose I would have done a lot of work, self-development work, I suppose, as an adult then, because when you come from a background where you don't know what losing is, as an adult, then when you lose, it's like, it's a lot harder to take, you know. But so yeah, I suppose, look, I coming back from a coaching point of view, I suppose then, you know, my motto always is to talk to the girls the way I want my own daughter spoken to.
Okay.
And I'm sure I make many, many mistakes, but I think if I can keep that at the forefront, I can't go far wrong, you know, with the interaction with the girls.
Absolutely. And Will, Fiona hits on a point there as well that I wanted to bring up in terms of, you know, winning and losing. I mean, look, at underage, when they're young, you just want them to play and get used to learning the skills and the fundamentals. But there does come a time when results matter. So as a young player, and bearing in mind you're trying to keep the player at the center of everything that you're doing, and that focus, how do you talk to a player who's experiencing a defeat and to still keep them involved and feeling involved in a team environment? It's when that player is also understanding that, yeah, now it's getting a bit more serious than what it used to be when it was all about fun and just getting out there.
Yeah, well, look, anything you're involved with, if you don't enjoy it, then you won't improve. And I think that applies across all aspects of sport or in life in general. You need to enjoy it first. But I think it's all about the messaging that you use and the language you use. I think Fiona, you kind of touched on there as well in terms of how you engage, interact with your players. And I think you need to, I suppose, go to the approach like, can we improve everybody individually first? So here we are, my role. So what is my role? My role is to help you achieve your goals. If we're good enough, we'll achieve and we'll win. But I suppose can we get this kind of, environment where everybody feels, it's all trying to improve. So improvement of performance and focusing on that is important because at the end of the day, Jackie, only one team can win a championship. Does that mean that all the other players and all the other teams and all the other coaches are not so good? No, that's just the nature of the draw. So can we get the understanding of the journey that's involved in it being the best you can be? Let's try and achieve that first. And I suppose having that approach from the very outset. So you're messaging with your players. And players, I do think though, Jackie, like players do value when a coach pays them attention and gives them individual feedback and outlines them where they are improving and where they are in their own journey. I think if players receive that and they feel valued and they feel that they are improving, I think everything else kind of comes in second nature. However, if your focus is on the outcome, then sometimes we could lose sight of that, Jackie. And I do think that if we treat everyone as people and give everybody's at different stages of development, at different stages of their journey, but if we aim to improve everyone, then let's lift all boats, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I just think it's the messaging and the language and how you approach that, Jackie, I think is important. And if you are good enough and you have all the other things in place and you have luck, then maybe you win those championships as well.
And for players, I think I've just jotted down a few things you've spoken about there, William. Messaging, the culture, feeling valued, right? That's all part of the journey. So if your messaging is on point, if the culture is on point, and if you're feeling valued, there's obviously more of a chance that you're going to stay involved. But if the opposite applies, well, then you're going to have the dropout that we're trying to tackle on an annual basis. Will you send through a list of headings as well? And those words I've mentioned there all tie into this: individual development, dealing with pressure, giving players autonomy, communication, load management is more of maybe touch on that, William, in terms of the load management piece, because obviously younger players are at a time in their lives where they might not perhaps yet know what sport they want to play. They're doing gymnastics, athletics, camogie, ladies football, soccer, rugby, whatever it is. So how do you manage a load if players are involved in multiple teams and sports?
I think probably Sean and Fiona probably would be probably more, in a position to answer that with their current positions. But first of all, we want people to enjoy when they come to us, they enjoy being involved with us. But we got to recognize that, that there's so much going on in particular, young people now. There's so many, from an academic point of view, from also playing multiple sports. So, and also, it's just kind of being cognizant of there is much more to just your training session. There is much more to football, and there's much more going on. And I suppose, first of all, recognizing that, being aware of that. And maybe as coaches, even a simple thing as, what's their calendar for the week? Tell me, what are you involved in? What are you doing this week? And maybe the coach taking a lead role in terms of saying, do you know what, Mary? You had a camogie match today. Do you know what? Go leave off train tonight. Or if you want to come down and watch train, you're more than welcome to. Rather than you got to train tonight. You must train tonight. And again, it's just the language and our approach. So I just think recognizing that there's so much going on for players in general, recognizing that, being aware of it, and then I suppose playing a lead role and being an advocate. You know what? I recognize there's so much going on, but how can we help them along in their journey as well? So just small things like being aware that there's a lot more going on than just your football session. And I suppose, how do we keep that motivation high and enthusiasm in what they're doing? I know, Sean and Fiona, you probably come across that a lot more as well.
Yeah, especially in the school environment, Sean. Would be
interested
interested in your take on that now, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, William. Is that load management? You have to be very mindful of it, and you're aware that these young people have various things going on, and even the pressures of picking a CEO or what does next year look like. I know we get sometimes a comment saying, I love being handed a timetable and knowing where I'm supposed to be, and then suddenly there's this moment, and you're trying to create that autonomy. So I'd always look at my sort of style. I know I'd probably be described more as a laissez-faire coach. I was once given a present of a very good mentor of mine. That was a book called The Four Agreements. And the fourth agreement was don't make assumptions. So what I sort of took away from that and brought to my own coaching role was don't assume somebody knows they're doing a good job. Always tell them. So whether it's on the corridor in school saying, look, listen, that was a great game, or how are you getting on with your club? It's that investment. It's a long-term investment. Or after a match with Whitehall, Colmkill, there'd be several players text afterwards, because you can't really get around to every player afterwards. They're very quick to jump in the car and go there. Just so you know, I noticed this and you're really improved. That we were focusing on kicking with the instep all week in training. We kicked 3 points with it. And you just get this, I find, when you're putting the pressure, well, not pressure, showing the interest more so from the coaching perspective, suddenly you're getting the players to engage in a reflective process. And you're saying I'd be very much adamant that I get my players to do a review of each game. So because I'm very mindful as a coach and as an English teacher, what is said isn't always what is heard for it. And certain words can be isolated. And sometimes when you're talking to the group, that individual could be thinking that's directed at me, whereas it's not. It's a team-based goal, it's a team focus, but sometimes we can feel that isolation. So when you're collecting the previews or getting the text messages, the previews, you're getting an insight to how, or a scope into how that player's thinking, and then you can actually adjust your sales as a coach, because I'm very much adamant you're dealing with people. You're not dealing with players, and it's well and good for the county manager because he has the elite 1%, but you have from the 100 to the 1. So you have to find a style or a system for each and every one of them. And you want each and every one of the players, whether you're scoring forward, that you cannot replace to the player with the most attendance at training that might just be on the cusp of breakthrough. You want them all to feel the same value of importance. And they want them all to feel that they have the same sense that I can come to you or I can approach you, that you're that's why I said that laissez-faire approach, because it makes you more approachable. It makes you more mindful, because I find oftentimes, particularly with younger players, the more they internalize it and bottle it up, the more nervous they are going on to the following game. I can't allow myself to make mistakes. And you're saying mistakes are part of life. Yeah. I know on the sideline I'm making mistakes as a coach. It's a part of it. So we'd always try to look at then. I would find it a good bit easier in school than in club, because I see the players every day. Whereas in a club, I'm only seeing it maybe 2-3 times a week. So if I've had a bad match at club on the Wednesday, I could be dealing with that emotion until the Monday. And that's a long time for a person to be dealing with it. And they're bringing it into college or they're bringing it into work. And then they're off the mindset, oh, he's going to give out to me or he's disappointed. And that's not the case. That's why I always find it's more or less their responsibility on the coach to reach out and to build that platform and say, look, we have an environment where everyone's valued, everyone's trusted. We would miss you. At the start of every senior team in Dominicans, I'd always do the 24 things to remember and one thing to never forget. So we'd have a team flag meeting and we'd come up, we are defenders, we are attackers, we are runners, and the one thing to never forget is how special a player you are to this group. And it's always like going back to that philosophy, particularly in school, leaving the jersey in a better position than you found it. It's not about the medals or the trophies. It's about because I'd always say to them, every player is irreplaceable in my eyes, because you all have your unique trait. You could have some brilliant captains that can just give a real inspiring speech, or you could have the captain that doesn't like to speak but can lead by performance on the pitch. So you want to have that. This is a welcoming environment, and particularly, as I said at the start, I'm mindful that when I'm coaching in school, there's loyalty to your club, and rightly so. I think the parish plays a pivotal role in the development of a person. But we'd have the philosophy, I liked it from 300, come home with your shield or upon it, was it? And it's the idea was to look after the person beside you and to ensure the person was better looked after than you. So we are giving out rubber bands to wear around your wrists with the Dominican crest on it and with that motto on it, because it's, again, you're trying to build a core identity for the group. And that we often see in the yearbooks as the 6 years leave and they go on to college or wherever life takes them, what am I going to miss? I'm going to miss the Gaelic football team, because it gives that sense of belonging, it gives that sense of importance, it empowered them. And then you're trying to bring that onto the club as well, for can we have that empowering that player where what I learn on that pitch, I'm going to take to all walks of life.
You're blowing me away, Sean. I swear. I think if I was a player in your dressing room, I think I'd run out.
I've got my motivational coach for next year.
I'd be gone out through the door anyway.
I'd be on you there, Sean.
Yeah, I want to go back to school and play on your team.
Stop. I'd be gone out through the wall, honest to God. Fiona, just on the load management piece, I know you're involved in inter-county level.
Yeah,
you know, you're with players obviously that want to play for the county, but they also have other things going on as well, other sports.
100%. And I think sometimes the girls are very hard on themselves and they want to turn up to every single training session and they want to impress all the time, and they're fighting for a position on the pitch. But like that, it goes back to as Sean said, they're setting that environment where they can express themselves and they feel comfortable and they feel respected enough to come forward and speak to you about it. And even that the whole individualized piece where you have to work with the person first, get to know them, build the confidence and build the trust there, and speak to them about, as William mentioned there, speak to them about their calendars, what's going on for them. Like as Sean mentioned there, you might have the 1% of the elite going for a county, but then you have those really strong girls then, and they're, we'll say, underage. They're the ones that the senior club manager wants as well, or the adult club manager wants as well, because they're strong. So they could be playing under 16 minor and senior with their club. They could be playing other sports as well. You're looking at schoolwork as well, some of them doing exams, juniors leaving certs, the whole lot. So it's all added pressure, and part-time work. So they're juggling so much, and sometimes the boyfriends and girlfriends come into the mix as well, so they're juggling an awful lot, and the social life and the whole lot. So I suppose it's about giving them the time, the individual time, so that you totally understand where they're coming from and what they are juggling, and letting them know that it's okay to take a break.
Yeah.
That, and also I think it's important as well to link in with the other coaches if they are playing other sports. Link in with that coach, link in with that basketball coach or that camogie coach or the swimming coach. So you're managing that load that they have, because what you don't want is to overtrain them. It goes back to, I suppose, you want them to be happy. If they're happy, you're creating that lovely environment, and they're happy, that's when they'll play their best football. And it's, again, I suppose it's just managing that and being flexible around your training loads as well, and being open to giving them a break when they need it. I suppose my thing is, when you define success, is success winning a provincial final or an All-Ireland final, or is success retaining the players and bringing them back the following year, and you'll do that when they're happy and they're respected and they feel listened to.
William, I think the players that Fiona and Sean work under are very lucky to have them as coaches, because you talk about the best type of coach for LGFA, and being autonomous and supportive and sensitive and inclusive. But is it a case then, William, that for players, they can either be lucky or unlucky with the type of coach that they have, and that determines whether or not they want to stay in the game long term or be successful?
Yeah, well, I suppose we do an awful lot of research, Jackie. Like, I'm involved in coach education.
Yeah.
We do a lot of research on, well, what type of coach are our players looking for? They're looking for that autonomous, supportive coach. So we have to think about, as coaches, well, what type of coach do you want to be?
Yeah.
You have to have your own clarity, your own philosophy, your own values, and how you're going about your business. You can determine, okay, well, where am I at in that? And I suppose being self-reflective is hugely important. And I always say, how would you want to be remembered? So if you're involved in a group, and you want to be a certain type of coach, well, how do you know that you're doing a good job? The best way you know you're doing a good job is by asking your customers, is asking our players. And sometimes we shy away from getting feedback from our customers because we sometimes be afraid of, well, what might we hear? So I would advocate strongly is, well, be clear on what type of coach you want to be, but then also, are you doing what you're saying you're doing? Are you delivering the way you should be delivering based on the type of coach you want to be? So asking your players about, well, tell me, how do you find tonight's session? Is there anything I can improve as a coach? And getting feedback from your customers and your players. I don't know, do we do that enough? And really self-reflect as coaches in terms of, well, am I being the coach I want to be? For me, success is, in 5 years' time, if I was to meet, Fiona walking down the street, and I was involved with Fiona, and I waved at Fiona, she was across the road, and I was a coach for Fiona, and I waved Fiona across the road, hi Fiona, and Fiona just puts her head down and keeps walking. Did I know how I made Fiona feel under my guideship or that relationship we had. But will Fiona wave at me and come across the road for a cup of tea, or that'll determine how successful I was as a coach. And that what motivates me all the time, Jackie. That's what keeps me going as a coach. Well, how do I make people feel? And I think that just keeps me onto my toes. But I always ask the players, what do you think of this? To tell me, how can we improve this? What do you think of the sessions? How am I as a coach? How can I improve as a coach? Tell me. I want to know. I want to improve. And I do feel as coaches, maybe in that learning cycle, we do preparation, we plan, we deliver, but do we reflect enough and do we review enough? But are we, as coaches, are we keeping that, that standards high in what we're doing? So that would be my advice to everybody: is sometimes ask your players.
Yeah, and I know it's a drum you bang a lot, Will, is the reflection piece, and I think it's very important to your own coaching philosophy and how you deal with people, and I think it's really, really important. Just going through the headings here again, Will, like you've touched on, taking an interest at a human level in what players do, not just in football, but obviously, Sean, you have this experience of, they're rounded individuals, the people you're dealing with, both at club and schools level, and it's not just all about football. It's how is the family, what you want to do, what have you a part-time job, this kind of stuff. I guess, and I know from being a child myself back in the day, is that if people take an interest in you, you're going to warm to that person.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, I have actually in my office in school, it's a poem called The Average Child, and it's about a child being labelled average for the first time. That's all he ever heard, and that's all he took through in his life. And it says he'd like to build a rocket. He read a book on how, or start a stamp collection, but there's no use trying now because he's average. And I think when you put that interest in the person, they naturally are drawn to you. And when they're drawn to you, they're going to be open and they're going to be authentic. And that's what you want, is that authenticity often, because then we can start looking at, I've often had a conversation with a player, or if I'm marking an essay in school, I said, is this the standard? It's a really good point that they might make. Is this the standard we're capable of? And they say, I think so. And I said, can I hold you accountable to that? And they said, I'd like you to. I said, right, H2, we're aiming for a H2, or we're going this, that. It's a shared goal. It becomes a shared goal. It's not an individual, and it becomes team. And then equally, they're seeing the authentic self of you. So it's win-win, because now you've become an approachable, responsible adult in that young person's life, that they're not internalizing. And naturally, then you can learn a lot by what's not said. As in, what's the body language telling you? For when you see, like, I'd look at the likes of when I'm coaching the senior ladies, and you're coming, like, you want them coming in their groups, in their 4 or 5s. I know they have the luxury because they're all adults that they could all be landing in an individual car, and then jumping in an individual car and heading home. That you're saying, where's the team environment? Where's the enjoyment? Because I know the enjoyment isn't in doing sprints with me. I know that's not why we're here on a wet Wednesday evening. It's like, where's the camaraderie? Where's the spirit within the group? And sometimes that's one of the things I think coaches can often be dismissive towards that importance. I might start the warm up 2 minutes later because the ladies are really enjoying that conversation. For it, I might just allow people to be people for it, and then we can make up the 2 minutes other side. Like I do as a teacher, I live my life by the bells and timekeeping, but you're going to have to allow it because as I said at the start, you're dealing with someone that could be there just for the enjoyment, love of the game. You're dealing with someone that might want to win in a championship. You're there, maybe someone that wants to push for county. So you have this big bubble of goals, and you want all them bubbles to rise at equal pace and equal value for it. So it's trying to make that shared experience and trying to make everyone see it through the lens of the coach and the team, not the individual lens for it, of saying, I need this. So I'd often have players say, what's our individual goal? What's our team goal? Then maybe 3-4 months later, we check back in. How are we doing? With the senior ladies, I had the luxury of getting really concrete data from a game we got recorded, and then because of that game and the results I went through, we spent a couple of hours on the overall season data. And I think for the players, it's important to see that, because you can see improvement. Oftentimes they might go, oh, that was a really good session. Well, what was good about it? Like, I'd be very much like you, Will, with reflection. What did I take away from that? Why was it good? I remember saying we were kicking with the instep, coaching with kicking with the instep. And I said, how did it feel? And she said, pretty crap, I missed. And I said, no, what the point of contact on the ball, how did it feel? I was asking you, how did the swing feel on your execution of the skill, not how are you feeling now? But because of that, you were able to have a really authentic conversation and really nice, okay, so this is our feeling. So we don't really like coping with pressure. We don't like the pressure of kicking, maybe if it's a level game and I have the ball last minute, I'm looking for a pass. So you're trying to say, but let's start putting ourselves in the position of that in matches, because the more times we do it, the less pressure we're under. I find when we're trying to avoid something, that's when we become more fearful or more anxious of that scenario happening. So if you can actually build an environment where I'm not, like I always say, I'd never give out to you far or wide, but I'll give out to you if you're in a position to take a shot on and you don't back yourself. Because if you're not going to back yourself, how can you expect others to back you?
So, Sean, what you're doing there is you're taking them out of their comfort zone in a nice way as well.
Yeah.
It's really good. Fiona, there's what I wanted to touch on with your good self. Will talks about giving players autonomy, involving them in the decision-making process, sessions and tactics, etc., and thinking about strategies to improve problem solving among players on the pitch. Has there ever been a case, Fiona, where you've probably got your own preferred way of playing the game? For example, you look at soccer coaches, some might be 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 or whatever the case may be. They have different formations and different setups, and you might think that, okay, this is my preferred way of playing. But actually, when you look at the players that you have at your disposal, it might be a different style of play that will suit these players best. So you need to probably take your head out of there and say, okay, I'd love them to play this way, but these players are not suited to playing that way. So I need to think of a different way to play. Does that question make sense, Fiona?
Yeah, I suppose, look, it's about... I think Sean mentioned something there that, about the girls making mistakes or whatever, or being comfortable, creating that environment where they're comfortable enough to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes. And I suppose one of the things, and it's funny, because last year we had this where we had, given the players autonomy where you're, bringing them in after a couple of, after a few minutes and asking them how do things go or whatever, bringing them in as a group. And just giving them that little bit of, I suppose, that leadership, where they're making decisions and they're problem solving, I suppose. But they come in and they talk, and you're kind of asking these guided questions like, how do, what did you notice there or what went wrong? But it's funny because sometimes you'll have one or two of the very, very confident girls that will do all the talking. And then what's left with the group then is everyone else just stays back. And every time you bring them in, you have the same problem where 2 or 3 girls are doing all the talking and none of the rest of them are saying anything. So, I think it goes back to that, again, that individualized thing where I suppose, again, last year, what we brought some of the backroom team, myself and our FLO, did a kind of a review with the girls in the middle of the year to see how things were going, and like that, asking about our coaching and were they happy and all this. And we gave them the choice of coming in individually or bringing another player in if they didn't feel comfortable coming in. But it was just, I suppose, giving them the autonomy, giving them the time to be listened to. But I think as well, and then it also gave us the opportunity to speak to those girls that were doing all the talking and just say, do you know what, the next time we bring the group in, let's hold off. I don't want you to say anything, and they're bursting. You can see it, you can look at them and you can see they're bursting, but I suppose it's about, raising the confidence of the other girls and giving them the opportunity. And that might take a few minutes as well, of silence for them to come forward. But I think that's really, really important. It's, I suppose, that positive team culture where you don't have the same people talking all the time is really, really important. So just to give them that individualized space to I suppose, combat that in a sense. But I suppose the decision making on the pitch, I love it when girls make decisions on the pitch.
Taking ownership. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, it goes back to creating that environment in your coaching environment where the girls are enabled to do that. They're able to make those decisions, and it could be very simply, getting different girls to take control of the warm up or the warm down, or just giving them a little bit of practice in taking the lead. And from that, I think that builds on their confidence then to make decisions if things need to be changed out in the pitch or whatever, within reason, obviously, But look, when they're out there in the middle of the pitch, they can sometimes see it a hell of a lot better than we can see it on the sideline. And I think it's really important that they're comfortable enough and confident enough to make those decisions sometimes that we may not see.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I think, Will, it's a good point to almost wrap it up, because I think we've touched on pretty much everything throughout the conversation in terms of individual development, the pressure that sport can bring, and tackling resilience and anxiety and making that safe space, giving the players autonomy, communication, load management, the positive environment, off-field activities, and taking an interest in players and coaching styles. But have we kind of evolved, Will, to maybe a stage where back in the day perhaps it might have been the real autocratic coach who dictated everything, to, as Fiona touches on there, a more player-led environment, and they're more confident and capable of making decisions about the culture of the setup and how the team plays, but also with the coach stroke manager remaining very much as figureheads within that setup.
Study there recently, I think in the study over 22 sessions that we observed, I think the coach spoke about 60% of the time, in a session. The players, I think the use of questioning was 3%. So think about the dynamic of that session. Probably a lot of girls listening to the coach, probably hands folded. I think about 22% of the time girls were inactive. So for a 50 session they weren't doing anything. So I think it's just these coaches need to probably be aware of this information. This data is very important to us in terms of our coaching and how we coach. So if we want players to be better decision makers, problem solvers on the pitch, then we need to give them that opportunity to input. And so therefore our language and the questions we use, and how we set up our sessions, and how we get players to think about what we're doing and why we're doing something, and getting them to think differently about something. I just think we as coaches need to probably just think differently of our approach. That's all. And probably just get the players a bit more involved in our sessions, and then they'll enjoy a lot more because they get involved in the whole thing. But one thing I would say is the most powerful thing you have as a coach is your personality. And a lot of us think that we need to act differently. We don't. Just bring your personality to your session, and people will connect with that. But don't try and be someone else, or don't try and be. There's this perception that you have to be look a certain way, wear a certain clothes. You don't. Just be yourself. And I think that'd be the biggest thing I would say, is that that bring your personality. And I think, can we be more supportive and autonomous in what we're doing, and just think about, can we give a bit more ownership and autonomy to players in our coaching sessions? That's supposed to be just an interesting point there from the data that we're collecting at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant, Will. It's a great way to finish it, because look, I think we're only scratching the surface here, but it's been a really brilliant conversation. So to Sean Costello from the Dominican College Griffith Avenue in Dublin, Fiona Crotty-Laffan from Ballymac and Waterford, and your good self, William. Just really thanks for your time today, and we'll get this up on our channels real soon, and we look forward to the next show, Will.
100% next show. Yeah, we're going to look from a different perspective, so looking forward to it, and thanks to Sean and Fiona. But look, hopefully people can take something from what's been said here today. Sean, I must say, definitely motivational speaker. I'll be on to you. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Chuck it down, Sean. Chuck it down. With you. And Fiona, performance coach. I'll be on to you. Yeah, I love those one-to-one meetings and those group meetings. Yeah, I'll be asking for advice around that. Yeah.
So 100%. the dream team is...
The dream team, I think we have it, Jack. And Jackie, you can be manager, 100%.
Sorted. No, we might leave that one to somebody else. Guys, thanks a million for your time today.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thanks.